once you make them realize there's something better, there's a better entree on the other side of the menu, and you don't have to deal with just, the grilled cheese sandwich you've been eating every day. And they try that steak and they're like, wow, how did I never know I had the steak option? This is amazing.
Hey, welcome to 10X Your Team with Cam and Otis. We're a father-son leadership podcast where we talk with other lifelong learners about making an impact and solving big problems. And the big problem we all had, we realized this in the green room, is volume control. Damn, I remember when TV was terrible about that. Every so often it still does it, where like you're watching a show and a commercial comes on and it's like, if you're doing the clicker 4 or 5 buttons up in volume. We all just realized that we have the same problem. When you're watching a video on YouTube or like this show, or Facebook or one of them other ones out there, the volume is always really high. But then you switch over to doing a call like this, like what we are, the tool we're using, Riverside or even Zoom. It's like, hey, speak up. Can't hear you. Is your mic on?
Oh, yeah.
Get closer.
Well, it's like TV, every single show, every good show. Sorry, I'll put the asterisk on the front of that. Every good show, the dialogue is going to be real nice and quiet, and then boom, pharmaceutical ads right in your face. Yeah, it's rough. I gotta go back to Dad. We were talking inventions, and it's like, how does somebody not figure this out? I got to throw back to, and I don't know what brand. I need you to drive down to the Rudy's near Garden of the Gods, Dad. Go tell me what brand TV they have, because I remember watching Aggie football games there 12 years ago or so, and they had a half mute button. And it is still one of the best inventions ever, because you're jamming out, you got the football game, you want it loud for the football game, and then it goes on, pharmaceutical ads, boom, half volume, perfect.
There you go.
So all the folks out there, give us our 10%. You guys know the drill.
Yeah. There you go. What's that? There's a guy on Instagram I stumbled onto. It says, Venmo me $5 for that.
Yep, there you go. and to clarify, that's 10%, 10%, and 10%. So it's 30, but
30%,
we'll cover that in contracts. Yeah, we'll get there.
There you go. Yeah, Jason, our good friend Jason Kramer joining us, not the agriculturalist, the inside joke from the green room, right. Folks. Could not resist that. Although, Jason, do you have a green thumb? I mean, since we're going down that path.
Do I have a what? Sorry?
Have a green thumb?
Not so much. No, I don't actually. Wow. That's why when I go shopping for any plants, it's got to be, perennial. Like I don't do annuals, it's not my thing. And if it ain't going to grow back next year, and funny to bring it up, I was just telling my wife, I just missed the mark. I'm in New York, and I didn't have time to put down the fertilizer I'd normally put down at the end of, right before the winter. And right. I was going to do it. And I was like, well, I was reading the package and it's like, well, it's got to be over 50 degrees during the day, 55. And I'm like, well, it ain't 55 anymore. So at some point and spend all that time and effort, for it not to work. But green thumbs I do not have. That's why we have no plants in our house and just trees and grass outside pretty much.
There you go, man. And that's why you do what you do. And as a marketing expert and really the CRM guy, which, folks are still using spreadsheets.
Oh yeah. They are.
What do you tell Bubba, who's like, what do you mean a CRM? How do you spell that?
Is there a vowel in there?
Yeah. What do you tell them? How do you get them to get off that spreadsheet?
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up, Otis. There are some businesses we talk to, and these aren't garage-based businesses. These are a few $1 million in revenue that are not even using a spreadsheet. They're just writing things down. I was on a sales call. Yes, actually not even a sales call. It's a new client, I should say, and we just started to do some training, understanding what the needs of the sales team are. Because they're just starting to. They've had the CRM, they're just not fully utilizing it. And so there was about 4 people on the call, and I was like, can each one of you just tell me, like, what do you do today? If you're not really using this, what are you using? And one of the guys holds up his, remember the Franklin day planners with the binder and the zipper, right? He's like, I've been using this for 20 years. This is what I use. I'm like, so you have to go through there and flip through to remember who to follow up with and write everything down. And obviously there's no searching for anything, right? You got to just lick your thumb and flip through the pages. So it's really a comfort thing. That's really what it comes down to. Just like in anything in life, it's the reason that people don't, we talked about working out at the gym before we got on here. Same reason people have bad eating habits, whatever it is in their life that they do, it's because they're comfortable doing that thing. And so learning how to change behavior is really what it's all about. So it's not about that the spreadsheet is drastically terrible. Yes, it has a lot of bad qualities to it, but they're comfortable with it, Otis. And that's once you make them realize there's something better, there's a better entree on the other side of the menu, and you don't have to deal with just the grilled cheese sandwich you've been eating every day. And they try that steak, and they're like, "Wow, how did I never know I had the steak option? This is amazing."
Yeah. There's a little bit of a sales lesson there, which I would love to drill into, which is how do you paint that picture then to take the grilled cheese and the steak there? One of the things that comes to mind for me with, my rugby background is I can tell you how rugby is just like whatever sport you're coming from, because I can make it sound like it so it's really exciting for you, right? How is the grilled cheese going to be just like the steak? How do you get them to move with it? Because I think there's a key there that so many people miss, which is I have this pretty shiny object right here that is so much better than what you're using, so you just have to change. And it's like, well, no, I'm comfortable. I'm comfortable for a reason there with my grilled cheese sandwich. How do you get them to connect those dots that it's like, hey, that's not bad. You're not a bad person for liking that, but we could do better over here. Because if you attack the pride and start hating on grilled cheese sandwiches, I'm walking away.
Right. Hey, listen, we all love grilled cheese sandwiches. I mean, add a little slice of bacon or a tomato in there, some good sourdough. Forget about it. Who would turn that down? So the answer to that question, Cam, it's really simple. It's not about the features and benefits of any CRM. And by the way, for those that don't know, a CRM is really a place, three main focal points is what I think of a CRM, just so everybody understands what we're talking about. It's a place to keep not only your contacts of prospective customers, it could be your vendors, it could be your referral partners, it could be existing customers. It really should be a collection of all your data, right, in that one central place. It should also handle all of your sales operations, meaning, a sales dashboard tracking where things are in the sales process, how many people, you closed, how many you lost, having reporting about sales. And then it also should really function as your email marketing platform, which we'll get into maybe a little bit. But those three fundamentals is really what's going to be the pivotal difference. Now, how do you get people to understand that? You don't talk about the features and benefits. You talk about, well, I'll give you a quick example. We have a lot of clients. The common thread is that they do a lot of quotes. And we're talking at least, probably 500 quotes a year, right? 300 to 500 at a minimum. And so we all know people get busy, and things come up and you forget to follow up, and it's been a month, it's been 2 months, or it's been 6 months since you last reached out. And you sort of just make the assumption, well, they probably hired somebody else. They haven't gotten back to me. They haven't returned my calls, right? Most salespeople have that, I think, that attitude. And it's quite frankly, in my opinion, a very a sad and disservice to have that attitude. And the reason being is that we all know in sales, until you get the no, there should be no, right? And so this roofing client we started working with about a year and a half ago, they were not following up. After 5 or 6 weeks, they were just so busy, they didn't have time to follow up. Yet they spent all this marketing dollars to get the lead in the door. They spent all the time driving to the home, doing the quote, following up for, a couple of times, email, phone calls, and they would just walk away. And I was like, this is insane. Like, how can you just walk away? And so we created an automation in the CRM where every 2 months, an email would go from the salesperson's email account to the customer saying, hey, it's been 2 months, Jason, right? Are you still interested in the roof? Did you hire anybody, et cetera? Wouldn't you know that within 6 months, we closed $1.5 million in revenue just from following up, right? And once I tell that story to a prospective client and give examples like that, they're like, oh my God, right? That's like, how did you do that, right? How is that possible? And so it's, in a long way of saying, Cam, it's the problems that we identify and that they recognize as a problem. And if I can visually show them and articulate how we could solve that issue, that's the buy-in, right? That's them saying, okay, the steak is better than the grilled cheese because it could solve this issue I was having. I was still hungry after I ate the grilled cheese, right? And then I wanted to eat something else. But you got the steak, you're good all for the rest of the day, until dinner. So, yeah.
Love that.
How did what was the catalyst that you said, all right, this CRM thing is really the clutch solution? What, were you in sales, or what was it that you said, oh, we got to do something about this problem?
It's actually not even that of a connection as you might think. So my background is in advertising and design. I used to be a graphic designer, so went into many moons ago college for. And so what I recognized in the world of being a marketer and owning a marketing agency for 16 years, that so many people are spending money, lots of money. We're talking, some businesses spend over $100,000, right? Millions of dollars a year in advertising. They were not understanding what was actually working and what wasn't working. And what I mean by that is, it goes back to the old age difference between a marketing qualified lead, right? Where that's just the marketing team getting somebody to fill out a form, getting somebody to call, right? But they're not necessarily qualified. They're just responding to something. And then you have the SQL, which is the sales qualified lead. And so many companies do not have a distinction between the both. They just think as somebody filling out a form is a lead. And the three of us know that's not a lead, right? If you haven't talked to them, you don't know if they have the problem you could solve. They don't know if you could afford to work with you, right? There's all these questions that are unknown. And so that, Otis, was the reason of once I realized that a CRM platform can fix that problem, everything else built off of there, right? It wasn't even about the quote follow-up at that point. It was just recognizing that there's a misstep between the connection between marketing and sales. And quite frankly, that's why many companies jump ship with their marketing agencies, right? They sign up for a year and then they don't see any results. They don't see the needle move in revenue. They don't see a major impact, and they blame the ad agency. It's typically not always the ad agency's fault. The agency has generated leads. It's just they're not doing anything to really track the quality of those leads and be able to give information back to the agency to be able to refine that approach that they're taking to do a better job.
Jason, you hinted at one of my favorite areas, and I think it's because it's really freaking hard to answer. But it's this interesting thing when it comes to like marketing, advertising, all these different things, where it's like, look, I spent $10 million on this, we got leads, and then now look at us, we're doing it. I always mention the Toyota-thon example, right? That it's like, hey, look, we run all these ads for Toyota-thon, and everyone buys cars. It's great, and it's like, okay, but does everyone going to buy a car anyway? Do we actually know it's from the ad? All these kind of things, like the attribution. There we go, struggling on that word. Is a really difficult thing. What's your process, or what's your thought process on teasing out what's actually working? Did I hire the marketing agency and they brought us all these leads, or was it the 10 years of organic I've been doing and it just finally clicked? How do we tease those things out?
So there's two really fundamental pieces to answer that question. The first is, and I'm not going to get technical, but I'll just throw the word out there, attributes. You brought up attribution. There's something called first touch attribution and last touch attribution. And so the difference is the first touch is they clicked on a Google ad, right? They found you on Facebook. They went to a trade show. You saw them on a webinar, whatever the first thing was of how they found out about your company. 90% of companies track the first touch, right? Because that's making the first impression. The more advanced companies, and we work with some of those, not only a few do this, they look at last touch. They don't care about what was the first thing that got somebody interested. They want to know, to your point, Cam, what was the last thing that influenced them to hop over the fence and become a customer, right? Because that's what ultimately moved the needle, right? To get them to switch over. Now, a lot of people also don't realize, they think when you think tracking marketing, it's the things we're talking about. It's digital, right? It's social media. It's pay per click. But you can track a whole slew of other things. And I'll go back to that roofing client because they were a perfect example. This guy was spending about $80,000 a year on marketing. And he was doing everything. He had trucks driving around with his logo on them. He had lawn signs. He was doing direct mail. He was doing radio, TV, you name it. He was doing everything. But he wasn't tracking any of it. He was just spending. And he was spending because he was fearful his competitor would jump in and spend where he wasn't spending. So he did it all. And what I said to them, the two very easy things that anybody could apply in their business today. The first is when somebody calls your company and you say, "Thank you so much, Otis, appreciate your call. If you don't mind me asking, how'd you hear about us?" And not only how'd you hear about us, you as the salesperson and the office manager, whoever it is, in whatever you're doing, even if you're writing down in a spreadsheet, you have a drop-down menu of all the different ways somebody could hear about you. From a referral, I saw your ad, right? I saw your truck driving around, all the things you do for marketing. And I guarantee you, you start recording and asking that question of how people are finding you, you're going to have a lot more insight to understanding which of your different marketing and advertising efforts are working. Secondly, QR codes, to me, we talked before about technology and about the voice thing, right? And the mute button, the 50% mute button. QR codes, I think, are an underutilized resource when it comes to CRM. Reason being is it's a technology everybody's familiar with. Technology is still relevant. And for this roofing company, instead of just a lawn sign, we put these massive QR codes on the lawn signs that someone could scan from just driving from the street. And when you scan it, you're going to a specific page that's not available to anybody else. And so if you're asking for an estimate from that QR code, we know it's from the lawn sign. 100%. There's no definitive guessing on that. And so that's one way we can track things that are not digital that, again, other people can track too, but that's just a little tip on that element, of going one step further to get more detail.
It brings up something else. You mentioned, doing a little bit of everything on that. I would love to hear your thoughts, Jason, on that. As for the person who's like still trying to figure out where exactly the leads are, trying to piece that whole system together. I think a lot of us have the instinct of it's like, well, throw 10% at each thing rather than going 100% into the one thing here. What are your thoughts on that? Now that we know how to attribute those leads, it sounds like it's fair game. Go for a little bit of everything, right?
Yeah. So this is the other classic mistake people make. They say, okay, well, we're going to try it for a year and see what happens. And so if you're spending, even if you're spending $1,000 a month, right, on whatever you're doing, I'm going to try this LinkedIn program. I met this person or what have you. Now you just spent 12 grand and you're waiting until you spend 12 grand to figure out if it worked or not. Not a very good investment. I mean, I always compare it to the stock market, right? If you're buying into any type of stock, you're probably not going to keep buying something unless you start seeing a return or seeing that it's headed in the right direction. But when it comes to marketing, people, for whatever reason, I don't know if it's what the psychological thing is, and maybe we get a fourth person into the next podcast and we get from that perspective, but they're almost fearful not to give it a try for a long period of time. But I can tell you definitively that you only need 30, maybe 60 days to test anything. And if you're not seeing results in 30 to 60 days, it's clearly not going to work for the remainder of the year.
Can I ask a specific piece on that? Because one of the metrics we've heard from other guests on the show is that for things like organic, that it's like a 18-month period. If it's like this podcast comes out, we don't know how much business it generated us for 18 months roughly.
Sure.
Is that the key difference there of the organic versus paid? And is that what people are doing wrong, is kind of conflating those two together and going, I need 18 months of this to see if it works?
I think so, for sure, but it's not even about advertising. So I'll give you an example. Like a lot of people out there do cold emailing, right, and cold outreach. Now, there's very little cost in that, right, because you're maybe just buying a list or you're procuring it yourself, and maybe you're writing your emails using AI to write your emails. But if you've sent out 100 emails and you've got nobody to respond to you, you probably want to change what you're saying, right? Like, don't keep on sending out that same email to more people, but you're probably still not going to get a response. So I think it's really irrelevant. Yes, SEO and more organic things take more time to see results, 1,000%. But there has to be a point where you say, okay, I've done this long enough. I should have seen some results by now. And if you're not seeing those results, that's the red flag that something's not working, and you got to look and figure out what that is.
Is there a magic formula? Because that always reminds me of the story that Alex Hormozy talks about, putting brochures or flyers on windshields.
Right.
And his mentor, he did 500, and he was like, man, I did 500. That's awesome. His mentor said, well, we do like 5,000, or maybe even, it may have even been like 50,000.
Right.
You know, a factor or two more than what he'd done. So how do you judge that? You know, that data. When do you get to that point of, okay, we got enough data that this did not work?
Well, I think every business is different. I mean, so like we talked earlier about, like I'd rather have, 10 or 20 really highly qualified leads that I know I'm going to be able to get on a conversation with than some company saying, oh, we'll give you 20, 2,000 leads a month. Like those aren't leads. That's just names of people that I'll probably never even hear from, right? We all know that. So I think the volume does play into things, but you have to start small. You have to test, and see how it's going to go. You wouldn't go and say, okay, I am going to run a marathon if you haven't even tried running 2 miles yet, right? I mean, so you got to know if you could run, and the distance, but you got to also run the short distance too, right? Because if you can't make it 2 miles, you're certainly not making the marathon. So that would be my advice. Is like there's got to be, and it's different for everything, Otis, right? So everything you're doing is going to have a different point of where do we start testing. But I would say on an overall basis, as I said before, usually within 30 days to 90 days of doing anything, you should be seeing some results, but sometimes it does take longer depending upon what you're trying to do. Yeah.
What would you say is the way of telling if you've put enough time into something like that?
Well,
like what can I look at and say this is enough? Like for instance, people with like Facebook ads will say it's like you need to spend $500 to know that an audience is working or not working or whatever it is. What are those metrics to go, hey, I've done this enough. I can stop at the 30 days versus the 90 days.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's for every business is different, but I would say that probably somewhere between 100 to 1,000, if you want to call them outreaches or leads, would probably be more than enough, depending upon what it was you were doing. And it's also, you have to keep in mind, like, what is the ask? If the ask is, hey, click here to like download a free whatever, right? Then you're probably going to get more people to do that. But if the ask is, hey, click here to pay us $1,500 for an hour strategy session, well, that's a much bigger ask, right? And if nobody knows you, have no credibility, you're probably going to have a lower response on that. So I think it also comes down to, what is the call to action? Then what do you want that person to do? The other thing that's extremely difficult that a lot of people don't often think about, and because it's difficult, is put yourself in that person's shoe, right? If you're running your ad on Facebook or you're sending out that cold email and say, okay, like if I was the recipient of this, like would I open it? Would I be interested? And it's amazing how many people don't do that, right? They can't put themselves in the shoe of the customer. They're just putting their shoes in the eye of the salesperson, the business owner. So I think reverse role playing is really important to kind of have a gut check, to say, okay, am I even on the right path, to try to make this work?
Yeah, because the people who send out those emails that tell me that their colleague found me on LinkedIn and thought it was interesting, and therefore I should. Yeah. There's at least 3 of those a week.
That's low. That's small. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it has slowed
spam
down.
filter doing work. Yeah. There you go.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, maybe that's what it is, because I hit it all enough spammy.
Yeah.
I was going to ask, talking about this brings to mind lead magnets, and I've got one specific type of lead magnet I want to zoom in on. We could go from there, but Jason, are free PDFs dead yet? Because I've been waiting. Like Dad, you know it too, right? Like everyone's doing it. It's, oh my gosh, get this down. We all know exactly what it is. Yeah. How are free PDFs persisting? How much longer do we have with that lead magnet offer out there?
Well, I think, again, it comes down to like, what are you providing? If you're providing something of real value, see, this is the problem, is that when you go to a page and let's say there is a free download, there's 2 things to consider. One, if it's not gated, meaning you don't have to fill out a form, then you just essentially, what's the point of the PDF, right? You can just have the information on your website. You don't even need the PDF. Mm-hmm. There's no value to that extra step of that document. Of course, you can maybe track how many people are clicking on it, but then you can look and see how many people are viewing the page, right? So I think that's irrelevant. The trick with the PDF is like, what information is on that page that's whetting the appetite and teasing them, right, to want to download, right? So we go back to the whole grilled cheese thing. It's like, if you're reading the menu, so like one thing I've seen as a trend, at least in restaurants, some restaurants near me in New York, now that, which I think is a little bit over much, but like I get the value of it in some way. They bring an iPad to the table for the menu, right? And now it's got pictures of their dishes. And these are like higher end restaurants, where it's like, so it's like the description sounds good, but once you see the photo, you're like, oh, like that looks really good, and like, so you're more inclined to want to order that because now you see what the dish is going to look like before you come out. And it's the same way you turn heads, right, at a restaurant. And you're like, oh, what was that? Like, and you ordered, you're like, crap, I should order that dish, And you're like tapping the waiter or the person, right? Like, hey, what did you just order? I had that happen to me the other night when I was out for Mexican food. Like, I got this big hot bowl that was like steaming and stuff, and the woman at the bar, she's like, what did you order? And meanwhile, she got some like small little burrito. She's like, I should order that. It looks delicious, So I think it's about how you get people interested and engaged in what you're providing. I don't think they'll ever go away, Cam. I think that they're always going to be there, quite frankly. The same thing with white papers. And again, it's all relevant to your industry. Like some industries, white papers are really important and a fundamental piece, or case studies. Other businesses try to force those things on their customers, and it's not the right fit. So they're doing a case study when there's no reason they should be doing a case study. They're selling something for $50. Like nobody needs a case study to buy something, for $50. You're just going to buy it and try it out.
So
talk. Yeah. Of course, well, you could disagree.
I'm not selling the stock on lead magnet or on PDF lead magnets yet. Okay. All right, I'll keep riding that. We got another year or two.
Yeah, well, and as much as I want to stay in the restaurants and talk about food walking by,
so much more fun.
It is, we've all done that. Ooh, the what was when Harry met Sally? What's she having?
Right.
Yeah, we've all been there. But what is it? What's the magic of the CRM that you with Cultivate provide over, any number of them, from Salesforce to Go High Level to the Excel spreadsheet sort of thing?
So this is one thing that I'll say, and I call it a tagline, but I always tell people software does not solve any problem at all. It's the people that are understanding how to use the software. And that is the simplest way I can say is our differentiator, is that we are understanding what the problems are that a business has, identifying those problems that they may not even realize exist, like things falling through the cracks, no follow-up with quotes, right? And all these things that they submit as like not really a big issue, but potentially they are. And there's a lot of money that can be saved or earned from fixing those issues. But the biggest change and difference I can say, Otis, is that we help find the right technology. We built a strategy on how to use that technology. We do all of the implementation for you. Think of us as the white glove, mechanic that's you're dropping off the car. You don't even know what's wrong with it. We're helping you figure that all out. And then we're not only fixing it all and doing it all, but then we're going to be sitting shotgun with you indefinitely, pretty much everywhere you go, right? And helping you navigate, helping you find problems that might happen down the road. And so we really become a long-term partner with our clients. It's not just about, hey, here's a piece of software. We're going to set it up, train you guys, and good luck, we're done. We'll see you, when we see you. That model doesn't work, in my opinion, because everybody's going to go back to the old bad habits, potentially. Things are going to change in the business and the industry. They're going to have to adopt and modify the way the CRM is built. And so having a company like Cultivize as your ongoing expert, right, in your corner is going to make a huge difference.
Yeah, you talk about the technology. I mean, I'm by far not on the leading edge of things, particularly the AI, but I was doing some research for another project this morning, and what was I using? Chat GPT, number 5 or whatever the heck it is. And it offered to draft a RFQ and an email. And I was like, whoa. But that kind of integration into what you're talking about with CRM and the contacts, and that's where you're really getting into that specifics of matching it to the client, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and one of the other things that AI has been hugely instrumental for is what we call data enrichment. So you might know the person's first name, last name, maybe their email address, maybe the company. You may not know the current title they have. You might not know other pertinent information, their LinkedIn URL. And so you can go find that stuff, of course. It's not like it's impossible to find, but it takes time. And so AI is being used. We use it for ourselves, for our clients, to help enrich the data, make the data more usable to the salesperson. And like to your point, Otis, before with your meeting prep, there's tools out there that you can put in like, here's the person I'm reaching out to, right? That I'm having a meeting with. Here's their LinkedIn profile. Here's their website. Here's my prior conversations with them. Here's some notes. And then it'll go and it'll figure out their personality and their archetype to say, this person is more focused on this or that in terms of what they're looking for from a conversation. And it'll give you a blueprint on how to approach that meeting to have the best possible chance for success. There's a big, not big, but there's a term that not everybody that I speak to sometimes often knows about called neurostrategy. So neurostrategy is, basically neuroscience, but you're applying neuroscience to the language you're using to communicate with somebody. So it's not only the verbal language like we're having here today, but it's the written language in an email and a proposal. And if you insert in the right words in the right spot, it can really make the difference of how they are going to respond, to that email or to that proposal. And knowing how to do that can have really dramatic changes and effects.
Oh yeah, when I was doing writing proposals on the government side, to the government, not for the government, and this was well before AI, we would do those sort of things, the right words and the flipping the sentence around and making sure the structure and things like that neural language is, and to have a tool that's embedded that can help you with that is that's pretty cool, because I really had to scratch my head on that stuff back then. Yeah. It was a lot of time to do it.
Oh yeah. I mean, shoot, Dad, do you remember I tried to do that with our social media captions for a while? I was like, okay, how many words do I have in that first sentence? How much punctuation? Was there a comma? All right, okay, commas are good. Commas are good. Keep the commas going. Jason, talk about the different like touch points, send those emails and things. One of the things that comes to mind is with those different types of touch points and the different timing in the relationship, I think is a really interesting thing of when do you want to be personalized? When does the automated work? Like there's stuff out there. We're talking about all the different AI tools and things. There's some pretty good AI voice stuff out there that we could send the AI out and we could call it. And it's going to not convert at the same rate that I would on the phone, but it's so much better than the automated email. And you kind of have all these different pieces there. How do you kind of shape those out? Because like that personal touch does so much, but also if I'm calling every lead from 6 months ago and I'm getting into the 30-minute conversation, that's a nice day, I guess, but that's not really going to be doing that much for us. Those are the folks we need to send the emails to. Right. How do you kind of balance those two? What are your thoughts on that?
So there has to be multiple touch points. The same, we'll go back to the principles of marketing, right? Is why you see TV commercials, you see billboards, you see all these different components of how all the big box brands advertise, right? It's not just one thing they do, right? Because they need to evoke different impressions, right? Based on things you're doing, right? And like the different environment you live in. So my belief, and this is strictly more, on the B2B side, which is mostly where I work with our clients. I'll reach out via email. I pick up the phone. I call people. I leave voicemails. I talk to them on the phone. LinkedIn is a huge component to my outreach as well. And when you have that multiple touch approach, it really makes a big difference. But I think the other thing too that's often overlooked is not everybody, I shouldn't say everybody, but a lot of people will go and just, if we're talking about like cold outreach, let's just say we're talking about that for now. They'll send an email, they make a phone call, they'll reach out on LinkedIn with like an invite. But you're nobody, right, to them. I mean, unless you're coming through a referral, you're absolutely nobody. And unless there's an absolute need and your message is incredible, like, yeah, okay, maybe they'll respond. The much better approach, and I know people that do this, I do this, is I'll look at people's profiles specifically on LinkedIn. You can do this on Facebook, and I'll comment and I'll engage with them before I even ever reach out.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm planting the seed of letting them know that I exist, of who I am, that I'm interested in what they're saying. And then when I think the timing is right, and often, quite honestly, they'll reach out to me before I'll reach out to them. So they might send me a message to connect on LinkedIn, and they'll be like, oh, thank you for commenting on the post. And then I'll just naturally, over the course of days or weeks, it'll slowly morph into be like, hey, maybe it makes sense we actually talk and get on the phone, versus just come out and asking for a meeting. And so that establishing rapport, I think, is a fundamental, especially in the world of AI and automation, that has completely gone to the side for a lot of people, which is why everybody's just blasting, right? And they're sending out thousands of emails a day with very little results, because we all know, right? we see right through those emails. We see all, when there's 15 emojis in one email, we know it's AI that's written it, and we're just gonna hit delete, even when I don't even care what it says. We just hit delete. So, it's a combination of different things for sure.
That brings to mind the market maturity question of it, and kind of as things progress, and especially with AI, things can get watered down so much. Like what you're talking about there, reaching out early and these kind of even just interacting with them before you even reach out in the first place. Just use that as an example. Like, Jason, that's a great idea. Now this podcast goes out on YouTube, all these people see it, all these kind of things. Now everyone's commenting on everyone's stuff all the time. It starts to water that down a bit. And I love you could talk on that problem specifically, but also I wanted to zoom out on it of just how do you stay ahead of things getting watered down? Because as soon as, it's a whole race to be second thing. As soon as somebody figures something out that works for sales, it's everywhere. It's all over LinkedIn. It's going to be on every podcast, all that kind of stuff. How do you stay above that and not get watered down by all the noise?
So there's a tool and I'm not saying this because I know the guy that built it, but and I get no money for mentioning it.
Drop the promo code, Jason.
Yeah, right. Promo code, ding ding. It's called Evi AI, and what it does is it integrates into LinkedIn. But one of the cool things that he's done, and you could figure this out on your own, of course, is there's certain ways you could create filters for searching on LinkedIn. So one of the things I do is I say, who is my first tier connection that's made a post in the last 24 hours and nobody's commented on what they posted on? And I can be the first one to provide a comment. So that's one way to kind of get out from the crowd. The next thing I might do is I might say, okay, well, who's posted in the last 24 hours with a comment, right? So likely there won't be a ton of comments. Maybe there'll be 5 or 10. A lot of times there's just 1 or 2, so you can still stand out. I think it's the people that go back and comment on something that was posted from weeks or months ago that you don't have as much impact and quality there, and it's kind of and I don't do this, but I know people do it, where you're looking at somebody's profile on Facebook, right? And you're looking at a photo from 2 years ago, and you like it, you click the like button, and you're like, why are you stalking me? You're like, that photo was 2 years ago. You're looking through all my stuff, that's not nothing new, right? And so I think that could happen in business too, where people read through that. But if you're actively doing things in relatively real time, you can stay away from that cam and stay above that clutter.
And it makes it so much more genuine. That's at the end of the day, which is what you're after, of course.
Yeah. And I try to do that every day. I mean, usually every morning or end of every day, I'll look and see who's posted in the last 24 hours. And I'll generally, write, with his tool, and it's using a little bit of AI, but I modify it. I'll easily put anywhere from 10 to 20, 30 comments a day on different posts, which really helps start conversations.
Oh, I bet it does, because I'm sitting there laughing. We all know the guy that's helping you out, goes to your profile on LinkedIn and goes through all your last 20 posts and just like.
Oh yeah, like the LinkedIn pods.
Oh yeah, well I wasn't even referring to that, but yeah.
Right.
Is that still a thing? Are people still doing LinkedIn pods?
They do that, yeah.
I think we've all done that at least once and just been like, yeah.
Yeah, the same 20 people like everything.
Yeah. it starts to look fishy. I think
Right.
the algorithm probably at this
If
point,
it,
I think that they sniff it out.
yeah, I was gonna say if it looks fishy to us, algorithm already caught it.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. So I want to, because I love the way that you white glove customize the tool to your client, because, and I'll just share, it always brings back memories. When I was doing cool guy stuff, this new piece of kit would come down from the headquarters, and whatever it was, whether it was a piece of software or optics or whatever, it's like,
Mm-hmm.
here you go, use this. Be like, for what?
Right.
Right? I mean, because truthfully, and hell, we're one of those people. When you start talking about CRM, it's like, yeah, I know we need one, but why? How? And what is give me the list of advantages things. And I think that's where what y'all do with Cultivate can really be a differentiator from, the behemoth of Salesforce down to some of the smaller, cheaper ones. But there's still this, use this tool. You will use CRM. And
Mm-hmm.
we're like, okay. And you spend hours figuring out. So, yeah, walk us through you've touched on it. But I'm just, how does that, you get somebody in, what's the process? What do you do to create their own tool?
So, yeah, I mean, the first thing really, I mean, there's a lot of steps, of course, but understanding what their current process is super important.
Hmm.
The first thing I do, even before we bring on a client, I always make it clear to say, we're not trying to change the way you do things and make you do something different. We're just trying to improve what you're doing, right? So we're not trying to fit, as the saying goes, putting, a square peg in a round hole, right? We're not trying to do that. But it also has to come that within, obviously from above, right? So management has to be all on board with the idea and the execution of that idea to adopt something new. It's not just say, hey, here, use this, without explaining, like, why are we using it? Like, what is it for, right? And so there has to be, actually, I was on a meeting yesterday with a team where, again, they were using the system for the last couple of years, but not really all that well. And I just showed them some simple things. We met for like 90 minutes on what the system can do. And like each one of them had that aha moment. They're like, oh crap, I didn't know it could do that. I didn't know it could do that. And now they're all excited to want to do those things. And we didn't get into the technical aspect of how that actually works and how we're going to make it work. It was more about the, visually seeing it's being done already for somebody else, and it could be done for you too, right? And I think the biggest also hurdle to Otis is that, at least on the salespeople side of things, they often see a CRM in general as extra work. They're like, oh, double data entry. Now I got to come back and I got to put all my notes in. I got to log all my calls. Now it's going to be an extra 2 hours a day. And oh my God, this is terrible. Right? I mean, not everybody thinks that, but sometimes that's the attitude you get. And so the way around that is to make them understand this is actually going to be a time saver. This is going to be more efficient for you. It's not something we're asking you to invest more time in. And a great example of that is a lot of salespeople sometimes will just say, okay, I have to make 50 calls today, 100 calls. And they'll just go through a call list with no rhyme or reason. They're just picking out a list and like, okay, dialing for dollars, right? Next one, next one, next one. They keep dialing. But what if I told you out of the 100 people you were going to call, here's the 25 that are most likely to pick up the phone and have a conversation with you? Wouldn't that be helpful? Of course, nobody would say no to that. And so if the CRM is tracking every time they go to the website, every time they respond to an email newsletter, every time they have any type of interaction and they're showing interest, right? Their activity level is going up. We use something called lead scoring. And so lead scoring is a huge fundamental component to most CRMs, where it's like, hey, if you're going to make 100 calls today, here's the people you should call. Just don't call random people if you want to be productive. And so, in a long way of saying, it's making them understand that this is a tool to help them, not to hinder their performance. And that's what we have to get across. And if we could get that across, which we're pretty good at doing, then we're smooth sailing ahead.
One of the things that comes to mind with that, Jason, is it's like the idea, because it's a numbers game. Cold DMs, cold calls, all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
There's a numbers game aspect to it, and you're like, okay, hey, hone it in a bit on it. But then there's this interesting piece of the sales psychology then, because we work with you and hone it in. And I've got all this, and then I call 20, and it still doesn't work. And then it's like there's this thing where it's like you said it was going to be easier, and I've only called 20. But how do you balance those two? Because it's like the same kind of thing. Like if I spent all day on one lead and that lead works, okay, yeah, then that's better than calling 100. But if it doesn't, then I look really stupid for not calling that other 99. How do you kind of balance those two there?
Well, like anything, right? It's all about, trying, right? Trying what we're setting up and looking at the results like we were talking about earlier. So, everything we build, we're building based on the information we're given, right? About what your sales process is, how you sell, who you're selling to, what the decision makers are, what are the typical obstacles you face, right? All the, what's your sales cycle, all this information. Now, is that information always accurate? No. Sometimes they're just guessing, right? And they're telling us, oh yeah, our sales cycle is 6 months. And then we find out afterwards it's 3 months or it's 12 months, right? Once we start looking at the data. So the simple answer, Cam, is that we have to instill on the sales team that setting up a CRM is not setting it up, walking away, and it's done. It's a living, breathing thing. And we have to be prepared that there's going to be a few months of experimentation, right? And seeing if what we think is the best solution is truly the best solution. And so that's why our setup, while it might take 4 to 6 weeks to get everything going, it could take another few months for the team to start using it, right? What we built, and then reporting back to us, hey, this is great, or no, hey, you know what? I thought I needed a task reminder every 4 days. This is getting overwhelming. I don't need that many task reminders, right? And so we modify it. But it's a collective, collaborative effort, right? To fine tune it and get it just right.
More of a mindset problem than a metric problem. I got you.
Yeah, 100%. It's all mindset. I mean, it truly is. But once they start seeing that data and they start seeing it actually do something for them, making things easier, the mindset hurdle becomes less of an obstacle.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. You got to change the habit, and nobody likes change, right?
No, they don't. I mean, I like to use a lot of analogies, but it's like if you go to the gym, you go to the gym every day for 5 years, and you're kind of at the same place, and you start working with the trainer, and they're like, "Hey, you're doing your chest press all wrong. You're doing this all wrong." And then if you listen to that trainer and start making changes, like in 6 months, you're like, oh my God, like I've seen more change in 6 months than I have in 5 years. Well, yeah, I mean, because we're teaching you a better way to do what you were doing incorrectly before.
Yeah, and I think that's such an important thing, and it just reminds me of what I learned today, and it goes back to the monitoring the data and understanding here's my big word for the day, statistically significant is for that category of that department and that campaign and that product, all that, because what's important, what's statistically significant for Camden's free downloadable PDF and, a 1 year, $20,000 coaching program, pretty different, isn't it? So I think it all boils back to you got to know the numbers, and if you ain't tracking the numbers, you're just throwing money out the window. So, Cam, what'd you learn today?
Simple one for me. It's the SQL versus MQL, which is one of those things I think we've talked about probably 100 times on the show with various guests over the years. And that is the nice bumper sticker way of explaining it. SQL versus MQL. I love that.
Awesome. Jason, how about you, man? What'd you learn?
Well, I learned that we all love grilled cheese, but a steak is a whole lot better.
Yes, it is. Give me a ribeye, man. Give me a ribeye.
maybe a steak with the grilled cheese on the side. That actually might be.
Now we're talking. I trade that baked potato in for a grilled cheese.
There you go.
That's a good time right there. Ooh, because I sorry, come on, we're talking here. Grilled cheese, you sop up that steak juice real good. Oh, that's all right. Write that one down. Call the restaurant, friends.
There we go. New menu item.
That's right. There's your and Pablo's next restaurant idea.
For Big Pablo's House of Meat, which he still doesn't like the name, which I don't get. Come on.
That's a good name. I love that name, by the way.
Don't you want to go to the House of Meat?
Big Pablo's House of Meat? Would you eat there?
Would I eat there?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, why not? Yeah.
All right.
There we go. All right. Cool.
There we go.
All right, I'll call the bank. I'm going to call the bank.
Let's preface it by saying it depends upon what the outdoor decor looks like. If there's some red lights and depending upon the signage, and we'll see what kind of outdoor establishment it looks like.
Might need to work family into there or something to try to balance it out a little bit. I'm picking up what you're putting down. Yeah. Or you can just dine and put that in there.
There you go. Yeah, that's funny that we came right back around to the restaurant discussion. Jason, how do folks find you, learn more about Cultivate, and see what y'all got going on?
Yeah, absolutely. So the best thing to do is go to afterthelead.com. So I'll say it again, afterthelead.com. You can connect with me on social. As we talked, I'm heavily active there. You can also download. We talked about the downloads. Of course, I'll mention it, Cam. I got several, but the one that seems to be the most popular is a blueprint I created to understand how to nurture your leads and educate them through the sales process. So you could apply those tactics to, even if you don't have a CRM, quite frankly, it's really just about the principles of lead nurturing. And then lastly, hopefully it came through today. I'm all about education, all about helping people. On afterthelead.com, they could book a call with me, no strings attached. Happy to chat with anybody, answer any questions they might have. And I really just appreciate you guys inviting me today.
Awesome, Jason. Thanks again for your time today, man.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Camden, run us out.
All right. Thank you all for listening to today's episode of 10X Your Team with Cam and Otis. And a special thanks to our guest, Jason Kramer, for joining us today. Remember, you can watch full episodes of the show on YouTube at 10X Your Team. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please make sure to pass along to other lifelong learners in your tribe so that they can enjoy it too. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. As always, that full archive of episodes available at www.10xyourteam.net. Thanks again. We'll see you all next time.